Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Criterion Learning Series session on United States year-end. We're going to cover settings, reports, and we'll talk about Aatrix. As a reminder, we do have a chat and a Q&A feature, so if you have any questions along the way, please use the Q&A primarily, but maybe the chat if you can't find that, or maybe you want to just chat with us. I'm going to go pretty quickly here. We only have 30 minutes, so I'm going to jump right into the software here and do this. So before I show our software, I do want to have this disclaimer here. Let you know, of course, that if you have any questions regarding the taxability of incomes or deductions, we're not tax advisors, so please consult your accountant, your tax advisor, or tax consultant, perhaps the IRS or a state agency. Criterion Support cannot provide tax advice. What we can do is help you set things up according to that advice you have, but we're not going to actually, tell you how to tax things. That being said, there are some things that are general knowledge out there on Google and so forth about different changes that are coming in 2022. So you can see right here some of the changes that are going to be affecting deductions in the system here. So first off, retirement deductions, so 401k, 403b, 457 plans, they all have increased to $22,005 in the system, and I'll show you where that's going to go so you can actually put that in there. FSA healthcare increases, or the maximum employee contribution now is $3,050. That's an increase from 2022. FSA dependent care is staying the same at $5,000. HSA is also increasing, so the individual amount is going up to $3,850, and the family amount is going up to $7,750. Now, there, of course, may be changes that are related to taxes. Obviously, I don't have time to go over every single tax that might change. Just be aware that our system does update things where there might be a limit change or a percentage change. That happens as we we're made aware of those things. We put them in there. Many of the changes have already been put in place to be effective on January 1st. So you don't need to worry about that. So that's already taken care of for you. But just be aware that it does happen automatically, so you don't have to go in there and change it. The one thing you would need to change would be anything where you have a rate that is specific to you. For an example, you might have unemployment. Well, pretty much everybody has unemployment. Now, federal unemployment, of course, has the same rate for everybody, and that's taken care of in the system. But state unemployment, we, of course, have different rates for different states, and you may have multiple employers. You may have different rates for different employers. That's something that you would change. There's no way that we know that about you. So check with your state, your different websites that would have that information, so you can go ahead and take care of that. So let's go ahead and go into the software here. I'll show you where we would make some of these changes in there. And I'm going to jump right into the admin side of the software here. So let me just change this up. You'll be able to see my browser here in a moment. And there we go. So I'm already logged in. I'm in here as an administrator. So of course, you're going to need to be able to edit things in payroll administration to be able to do this. So if your profile does not have that capability, you'll need to work with whoever your system administrator is to get that. Or you can reach out to support, and we can help to configure to make sure that you're right, of course, working with your administrator. So what we're going to talk about, of course, is some of the settings in here. So we just mentioned some of the deductions have limit changes, or not limit, but rate changes as far as the maximums. So when I look at 401k as an example here, I could go into this here. Now, your calculation method, sometimes those change. That's obviously an employer setting. We can't tell you what's going to happen with the your contributions and the matches and so forth. But you'll see right here the limit. So 22.5. I've already updated this right here. If you came in here maybe before my last time I trained on US, it would have said 22,000. So this has changed to 22,005. And the same thing with an employer limit. You could go ahead and change that. Now, the way I have my 401k set up, and yours may be set this way, is I have a pool. And what that means is that other deductions, other 401k deductions, are going to share this same limit. in here. So I only need to update what we might refer to as the parent deduction code. I don't need to go to every single 401k. If they're all pooled together, they'll all read the same limit here. And I could show you that. I think I have another one that's a 401k dollar amount. And the limit, if I pool it, let me just turn that on. You'll notice that it's grayed out. So even though it says 18.5, it's actually reading from this plan right here. So that's how that'll work. And of course, what that means is that if an employee has both deductions, which certainly could be possible, they might be doing a dollar amount and a fixed percentage, or maybe they're doing a Roth and a regular 401k, and you're pooling it all together, it will combine all of the deductions year to date to up to that limit. So if they did 15,000 in a regular 401k and wanted to also do more in the Roth, it's only going to let them go to 7,500 because that equals the 22.5 limit. So our system already handles that there. So just be aware of that. That's where that is. You only need to update the parent if you're using a pool. If you're not, you got to go to each one. All right, so the same thing would have happened with, let's say, an FSA plan. You would go into your FSA medical plan or health dental plan and update the limit in here. As you can see, I haven't updated this in a while, so just like that. Now, you may have a lower limit, which is totally fine. So you could have a different limit in there, but that's where you would update it right on there. Now, the other thing is that employees may have a different limit. So it's possible that somebody did not want to do the full 401k. They said, I only want to go to 15,000, whatever they might want to do. That's something you could update on an employee record. So if I go to, I've got an employee here named Gary. So if I go to Gary and I go to his payroll deductions, I could have a limit on the 401k itself that might be different than what's on theirs. And you'll see here, it just already updated it, but I could have had a different one. And so that might be the effect there. And that might be other deductions, not necessarily a 401k. You may have other deductions for tools, for other things that have an annual limit. You could change it on the employee just like that. So you'll see that right there. All right, and the same thing would apply to any incomes that you have. If you have an income code that has a limit, you can update the code itself, or you can update it on the employee. So the code, let me open this in a new tab. It would not be under deduction codes. It, of course, would be under incomes. And I'm not sure if I have one I could use. Let's just say this adjustments one may have a limit. All right, whatever this is, I might have an annual limit in here, and I would want to adjust that. Now, the thing is, you don't want to adjust it in 2022 unless you've done your last payroll. The same thing happens with deductions. You don't want to adjust it while you're still doing things in the current year, because that would apply to this year. So either do it after January 1st and you're not doing any more payrolls previous to the 1st, or let's say you process your last payroll on the 22nd and you're done for the year, you could do it after that. So same type of thing there. And then finally with taxes, as I mentioned, unemployment, you may have a rate in there for unemployment. I know some states have other taxes. California, as an example, has an SDI. And I know there's many states that have other types of things. So let's say I have an unemployment and my rate is going to be changing to, let's say, 3.6%. I could just come in here. You'll notice that I'm typing it in, not as a percentage. I'm not typing in 3.6 and a percent sign. I'm typing it in as a decimal. So I would do 0.36, and then when I tab out or I click out, it'll change it to 3.6. So that's very important, because if I put in 3.6, it's going to be 360%. Actually, I guess our system does that. I've always entered it as 0.036, but I guess we fixed that. So it used to be that they would put it in as a 360%, which obviously is way too high and it would cause an error. But just double check the rate here. You also probably want to check your tax ID numbers. If you're using Aatrix especially, we'll get into that, you want to make sure you have the right numbers here. Always just double check them. Maybe if you haven't memorized your tax ID, you can go to your state website, or they probably have sent you letters or forms with your number on it. So double check them. You'll see in there, I have that for California SUI, Connecticut, I've got one right there. Whatever the state is you're in, go make sure those tax IDs are correct. All right, so that is how you can update things in the system as far as the limits and the amounts. The same thing could happen if you have a default amount with an income code or a deduction. You may want to update those on the codes. I'm not going to go over that right now because I only have another 20 minutes. So let's talk about reports. So of course, we're going to be running things like the W-2s at the end of the year. But if you want to make sure that the numbers that are on the W-2 match up to the various income and deduction codes and taxes, you'll probably want to run the reports where you can actually see the names of them. Because on the W-2, it just says like box 1. Well, what is that? Or box 12 and it's got a code. You may not know what all the codes are. So that's where it helps to run these reports right here. So I'm in payroll, I've clicked on reports, and I have all these different reports here. I'm just going to talk about a couple of them that you could use to do this. So let's look at the deductions totals reports. And the other two are different ways of looking at it through the detail. So in this situation, I'm going to run it just for the one company that I'm processing today, which is my company called Criterion. And I'm going to run it for the current year. Of course, this is assuming that I'm still in 2022. If it's January, I want to use previous year, or I could do custom and I could just type in the date range right here. But I'm going to choose current year just to make it a little easier for me. I don't want to put any type of other filters on there because I want to run it for the entire company right here. So I'll just hit apply. And this will take a few moments to run. And what it's going to show me are the totals for employee and employer. So when I'm looking at my W-2 and I have the various codes for, let's say, 401k or HSA or FSA or whatever it might be, that's going to be down there for your coding on the W-2, you're going to want to look at these totals right here. So when I look at my my box 12 and I see the code for 401k, I want to come down here and look and find all of my different 401k deductions and make sure it matches up to that. Now I call mine retirement, but you might call it 401k, but I would add these up and I would see, what is roughly $29,000 there. And when I looked at my W-3, I'd want to make sure that box 12 code D has 29,710.35, right? Adding those numbers up. So always check those. If you don't see that, if you don't in box 12, maybe it only has one of these, maybe it only says 14,130. Okay, there's obviously an issue because I'm not including something else in there. So you may want to check the setup of the code to make sure that it's right. And the same thing would happen with other plans on here, or other deductions, I should say, whether you might want it to show up on the W-2. So as an example, flexible spending, your medical for the code DD information, that's the employer medical amount. Again, check those numbers to make sure it matches up. If it's not showing correctly, what you would do is go back to those codes. Let's go back to my settings here for my deduction. And I can use my system labels to make sure that it's going right. Now it should, based off of the deduction type, correctly do that. However, sometimes you have something that is not necessarily configured right, or you wanted to show in a box and it's not there. Now I've got all these ones named T4. What you would see are some of that say W-2. So you would choose, it would say W-2 underscore box and then 12. And then it would say like A, B, C, whatever it would be for the different codes. As you know, there's, I think, about 30 of them or so. So you want to make sure that it's there. Now I've got these T4, that's Canada, don't worry about it. You would see the ones that say W-2, box 12, and then A, B, C, etc. And make sure that it's listed there for those codes. If it's not there, that's not a problem. It's not like you have to reprocess payroll for the year. You just update the code and rerun your W-2s. All right, the same thing happens with any incomes that are going to show up maybe in box 12. You want it to show up in a certain code. Same idea on the income code. We have a system label. Make sure it's there. So you may want to run the income totals. It's going to look very similar to this. Let me just show you here. I'll do, again, current year. And you'll see all my different income codes, and I have a year-to-date amount. And, let's say one of these should be showing up in one of those box 12 codes, or perhaps in box 14. You would make sure the code is on there. The other thing is, if all of these earnings are taxable, you could summarize them all up. As you can see, we have a total down here. If everything was taxable, now I know my gross wages for the year. And I could use that deductions report to subtract out the pre-tax to make sure it matches the stuff that should be in box 1, 3, and 5. All right, because that's, it should all add up and be correct. But what we see sometimes is maybe something was not configured correctly for 1 or 2 payrolls, perhaps you added a new code, forgot to set it as pre-tax, and it was not taxed correctly, or maybe something with an income code, it was set up as a reimbursement rather than regular cash or something like that. Again, it might not have been taxed correctly. And if you took your gross minus your pre-tax deductions, it doesn't equal box one. Now you're going, uh-oh, what's happening? That's where, of course, you can reach out to support to help you to diagnose that. Or maybe you notice, oh, I'm off by exactly $2,300. I can identify this code, and maybe I need to make some type of adjustment. All right. Now, the income totals by employee and income summary, these are going to be where I can see the detail. So if I wanted to compare the actual W-2s, each one of them, you could use this, or maybe there's just one employee you're having a question on or something like that. You could run it for one employee or things like that. I'll go ahead and apply this. So this is going to show me all of the detail for the employees and their income codes. Now, of course, the different reports all should match because they're all reading the same data. There's no reason that, let's say, income totals, if I add up everything in here under bonus, wouldn't match the report called income totals. But here I can see the detail for bonus, each employee's bonus amount. So Kat has $200 and Tamara has 50, et cetera. I can see that. And then it's going to go down. Here's the next one: sick time, lunch penalty, overtime, et cetera. They all have their own earning code or income code, and then each employee that's in there. All right, so you can see how that's all working in there. All right, the same thing would apply if I did the deduction totals by employee. It's going to be laid out each deduction code and each employee that has had that deduction this year. And then this one, they're called the income summary. It's kind of the other way around. It's for an employee and is showing all of the codes that they had. So that previous one was grouped by the code. This one is going to be grouped by the employee. Again, all three of these reports should match up. So here I can see Gary Griffin, and here's all of his stuff, and there's 34,015. If I went back to his W-2 and I subtracted out the pre-tax deductions, I should get the number that matches box one. Include the 401k as an example, and I should match up with box 3 and 5, assuming he didn't make over the limits. All right, so this would help you if you need to pinpoint each single W-2. You can, as you can see here, I'm running as a PDF. I can drop it out to Excel, and then I could do this stuff in Excel if I wanted to do it over there. Let's look at the tax reports real quick. So again, we have 3 different ones. The first one here does not have any year-to-date numbers. It's simply their configuration. It's going to show that they claimed single and $2,000 for the dependents or whatever. It's not the actual year-to-date. But this first one here, taxable wages totals, what this will show here, again, I'll run it for my company for the current year, is going to be for each tax code. It's going to show the totals for this. So I'm not going to see individual employee details. Every tax code that I use, and I have a lot because I do this for testing and demonstration purposes. So I have a lot of codes. You probably would not have several pages like this. You may have, just a few lines. If you're in a state where there's just a couple of taxes, you'll have your federal and some state taxes, and that's it. If you're like me and you've got payroll in, many states with different localities and so forth, you're going to have a lot of detail like I've got here. But look at this here. We got the gross wages. So you could compare that to the income report. All right. The subject wages, well, that's going to be your income, your gross minus the pre-tax deductions, right? So that's our taxable wages will be for any of those tax codes where there's a limit, like FUTA, $7,000 per employee. So even though the taxable wages were $485, only $159 was taxed because $7,000 per employee. Same type of thing can happen with your Social Security. There's a limit. So there's that there. You'll see that again with your state taxes where there's limits and so forth. All right. And then you'll see the different numbers. Now, I don't have any tips set up, but you may have that, and you'd have a number in their tips. All right. Then you see employer taxes, employee taxes, and the total for this. So if you were going to compare this to the W-2, let's say we want to look at box one, it should say 459, 467.91. And the total taxes for box two, I believe it is, if I remember right, 44,610.67. And then going down to Social Security, Medicare, et cetera. If I needed to see that employee detail, I can now run this, of course, just like the other ones, either by the tax code and all the employees by each tax code, or by the employee and all their taxes. So 2 options on that. All right, now, of course, there are many other reports that you can run. I'm not going to go into every single one of them because I only have another 10 minutes, but you'll see here things like the payroll summary. That's going to give me actually a pretty nice breakdown because it's going to show by employee all of their incomes for the year, all of their deductions for the year, all of their taxes for the year. So that might be a better way to run the report. If you don't want to, just focus on income, you can run this report because it will be maybe 1 page per employee, maybe even 2 people on 1 page, depending on how much detail you have. And then it'll be a total. It'll have the gross on there, et cetera. So that might be a great report to run. But there's other ones you can see on here, paycheck by employee, and other things you may want to run to verify your numbers that are there. So now let's look at the W-2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this report open just so I can compare those numbers. I'll switch over to my other tab here, go to my reports, and under tax filing, of course, the 941 is a quarterly report that you've probably been running throughout the year. I'm not going to run that right now because this is a year-end one, but that's a quarterly report. Now, the 940 is a year-end report. I'll cover that in a moment, but I want to show the W-2 first. So I'll do the W-2. I'll choose the company there. Here's the choice for how do I want the form to look. If I do not check this, I leave it unchecked as it is, it will generate an entire form. So it'll have the grid, all the labels and everything, and the numbers, of course. If I check this, we're going to assume that your paper has the grid and the different things on it, and we'll just print the numbers and the name and so forth like that. All right, I'm going to leave this as unchecked so we can see the whole form. I'm doing the employee copy. Of course, I want to do it for 2022. And you'll see here, I could choose if I want to sort it, maybe by last name, something like that. And then I'll go ahead and apply. Now, you don't need to do that sort, but I'm going to do that. I might make it easier to hand them out or something like that. And I should have my W-2s. Now, I left that report open because it has the totals, but I want to talk about this report here, and then I'll run the W-3. So this will give me, as you can tell already, it's got a lot of pages, 604. So I'm getting multiple pages per employee. I processed quite a bit of payroll this year. Not maybe as much as most people because I usually do it on smaller levels and I don't do every payday, but you can see in here. Now, things to check, of course, your employer identifier. If that's not correct, you'll have to go to your employer and fix that. That's going to be over in your settings under system configuration, you'll see employers. Same thing with the name and address here. If it's not right under the employer setup and the work location, that's going to be wrong. Like you can see mine is showing British Columbia. You may guess I've done the Canadian one of this, so that's why that's there. Here's the employee's address. And of course, if this information is wrong, where do you want to fix this? On the employee's address or their demographic screen if the name is spelled wrong. Same thing with the social security number. So you'll see here 150, 25, 80, 41. If that's wrong, maybe I transpose some numbers, so I'd fix that on the employee. All right, now you have your various boxes here. I'm not going to go over every one, but there's the 135, 246 for the taxable wages and then taxes withheld. Box 12, code DD. So that's code D, that's the 401k. Here's the state, and he's worked in multiple states. So I've got all these different things down here. You may not have this, but there's my state code and so forth. So you can see how this is working here. And we do have the instructions, as you can see here. So you could just print this. It's going to be 2 pages per employee with the instructions, and actually 3 pages. I forgot the other side of the instructions there, and then I'll go on to the next person. All right, so let me just go down to the end there. I'm sorry for going real quick here. And you can see the whole thing is out here. I guess I have some people who haven't earned anything, so I've got zeros. All right, so at this point, of course, if everything was right, I could print them, right? That would print them to paper, so I would load in any, maybe I've got some stock that's got a perforation on it or something like that. load that in my printer and print them out. I could, now I'm using the PDF viewer here in Chrome. Yours may look different. Don't worry about that. Maybe you have a save button that has a little disc versus the arrow there. It's a different look because of my browser. Yours may look a little bit different there. I do have this option to publish. What that means is going to push it out to either email or self-service or both. So I have that already configured in the system. If you need some help configuring that, I don't have time to cover it in this one. You can reach out to support. As a reminder for support, you can always click the question mark and there you go. There's the contact information, or click this little, this little question mark here. This will open up, you can see submit a request. So you can submit a request right there. How do I set up the publishing? And we can walk you through that. We have a video that shows that as well. All right, the W3 real quick. Let me go ahead and run that so I can compare it to my report there. And I'm going quickly because I want to get to Aatrix here in the last couple of minutes. You may or may not have used Aatrix in the past, but here is my W3. Obviously, it runs very quickly. This is just the employer one, so I don't need to publish this. But you'll see, there we go, 459, 467, 91. Well, guess what? Going back over here, there's that number. All right, I'm good. My taxable wages match up. There's my withheld, 444, 610, 67. Again, back to this report, matches up. So I'd want to do that, at least for the first 6 boxes right there. And then when I get to things down here that, go into other boxes, I could do that here, state as an example. Now mine, I'd have to add up all the other states. All right, so of course I could print this or save this to a PDF. Let's look at the 940 and then I'll jump over to Aatrix here. Oh, I don't have 22 here, so we'll have to make sure this gets updated very shortly because we only have a couple weeks left. But I could run the 21. I'd run a different report then because obviously I ran this report for 2022. I'd run it for 21, but you'll see here, there's my total payments. So if I was comparing it to this report, I would look at the totals. So 485, 360, that's what I would expect to see there. It's not there because I did a different year. Payments exempt from PUTA. So that would be the difference between the 485 and the 159, whatever that is. You just do it on the calculator, make sure it matches up. That's your amount that's over the limits or one of these other things here. Or if I had one of these, I think I may have had one of these checked off here. I don't remember what it is, but yeah, this would be a deduction. And this is they bounced over the limit. All right, and there's my subtotal of 108, 129, which would match this number in my 21 report. And then, taxable wages there, and then 714.19, that's the multiplying it by the 0.6%. All right, if you had any adjustments there, you would do those there. There's my FUTA tax deposited. And if I had not deposited at all, of course, I could say there's some other number and I need to either, maybe I deposited too much and I get a refund, whatever it might be as far as that's concerned. All right, here you can see each quarter, so I could run that same report by the quarter, verify the numbers. All right, now let's quickly look over at Aatrix. So if you have Aatrix enabled, you'll have government reports right here. If it's not enabled, I'll show you the setting very quickly here. It's under your payroll settings under system configuration. You're not required to use Aatrix if you turn this on. This just enables the menu. You can still use your, if you're printing out reports and doing it manually, you could still turn this on and run your reports. It's not an either or situation. The only thing is if you're using Criterion and you switch it to Aatrix, your option to submit to Criterion is going to go away. So don't change this if you're on Criterion, talk to support and we'll make sure you're taken care of there. But if you're on US client and you want to look at Aatrix, there's no obligation to pay anything unless you actually have them file for you. You could turn this on. What that does is it will turn on this menu item here called government reports. All right, now when you do that, you'll see here the form type. I have either federal or state. I'll choose federal, and then you'll see the different forms that are here. Now, this one has not been updated yet for 2022. It usually is in the second half of December that this gets updated, so don't be surprised, but this will change over to 2022 within the next probably week or so. There's the 941, and you'll see other reports that you could use this for, like the 940. All right, but you can see we can use this for lots of things out there. I'm not going to do a sales pitch on this, but you would choose the W-2s, and then you just choose the year and hit accept. Now, what's going to happen is I probably will see an error message, and it's not necessarily like a huge problem. It's just there's some data that I need to clean up. Oops. Let me get my password here. I thought I had this saved, but I don't. Yours would not be this. This is our test account, so it wouldn't work for you to use this username and password. Plus, you wouldn't be able to get to that email address anyways. Now, I'm going to see an error, or at least I did when I ran this earlier, but I wanted to show this. It's not necessarily like a huge crash of data. What it's telling you is that there's a problem with some information in here. So as an example, the zip code for one of my employees is, this is the Canadian zip code, right? And it's possible I've seen this happen before. Somebody just types in like 4 numbers for the zip or something, and it's a problem. So what you could do is you could search for the zip code that's the problem. Or here's another situation. This social security number is invalid because it starts with a 9. I made it up, right? So that's why that's the problem. So don't your hair shouldn't catch on fire if you see this. These are just things that need to be cleaned up. You may not see this at all because you may have clean data, but if you've never used Aatrix before, it's possible that you've got some stuff that we don't necessarily check for by default. We don't care if you're using your W-2s and you maybe have a test employee that's got a Canadian postal code and you didn't process payroll. We don't care. We're not going to give you an error, but Aatrix, it does matter. We're not sending the data to the employee, but we check it when we use Aatrix. So that's why we see that. Here's an example. We've got some social security numbers that have a dash in them, and that's not correct. I imported that. That's why there's a problem there. This is another one I see as well, that they have an ethnic ID that is not one of the standard ones. There's the standard 7 ethnic ID codes that EO recognizes. I'm not using one of them, so it's causing an error. So again, like I said, don't panic. You can just reach out to support. We're familiar with these and we can help you out to resolve these, running a few reports and identify them. But let me show you what a Aatrix report looks like here. I'm going to show you the history. I know we've gone a little bit over, but I want to show you one. Maybe I won't wait there. I'm going to go to my history just so you can see what it looks like here. I'll go ahead and choose Criterion. I'll click history. So Aatrix does keep a copy of your reports, or I should say we keep them locally under the Aatrix menu. And let me log in there. So here I'm going to see a list of all the reports I've run previously in Aatrix. And that's great. I could go back in history and I can see them all, which is great. If you ever need to go back and see what did you file, they are in here. Not that you can't regenerate them, but this is actually what was filed for you. So let me do a W-2s. I'll go ahead and click edit here. What this is going to do is load a grid. Now, I'm not showing the 941. The 941 actually shows you the report. This one shows you a grid that lets you see all the data basically in like a spreadsheet format, but it checks each column of data to make sure there's no invalid data, like a bad zip code. We don't check that on our W-2s. Aatrix does, so it's good. It's good that it checks that. It would also check for things like maybe the Medicare and Social Security wages don't match, which wouldn't be a problem if somebody is highly compensated, but let's say they're not highly compensated. Those two numbers should match. The wages should match between Medicare and Social Security. And if they don't, Aatrix will identify that. So that's why I was saying you may want to enable this just to run through the steps, verify the data is good, and then go run them out of our system and it doesn't cost you anything extra. All right, I'm stepping through my employer setup. I'm all good with my tax codes. All right, it's asking me, do I have any employees that are exempt from Medicare or Social Security? That's one of the flags. If I've got, an exemption and they're not equal, and I had yes here, that wouldn't be a problem. I don't have any clergy. I don't want to use control numbers. What kind of payer am I? I'm a 941 payer. And how do I want to handle the Social Security numbers when I print them? And now it's going to go ahead and run. Yeah, it'll create the grid here. This always takes a little bit of time to go through and generate all this. As you can see, it's checking for errors, which is great. So here you can see all my fake employees. These aren't real people. As you can see, 123 Main Street, these aren't real people. So what it's asking me to do is just verify my data is right. If there was a problem, let's say I didn't have an address street for whatever reason, maybe you imported your data and you didn't leave a street address for somebody in your import, which could happen. I've seen that happen. It would have a highlight in red and it would show me the error. There would actually be a message down here. I could click on it. It would take me to the employee that had a problem. So I could do that, but I can see that in here. If I saw, oh, Martin, that's not the right address, I could fix it here. Now, the thing is, this does not go back to update their demographics or their address. So I would still want to fix it in the system. All right, so I go ahead and verify all that employee information is right, and I'm going to say it is. So I'll go ahead and hit next. Now it's going to check the box 13 stuff. Oh, here we go. You see, actually, I got some errors right here. The email address for these people is not correct. So if I go to those people, come on, email address. And so you'll see the email address here. So it's checking to make sure that the email address for this person is in the correct format. I should see it's O'Keefe. Just want to show you what that looks like. It's Avril O'Keefe, and there it is. So you can see it's the apostrophe, I believe, is causing the issue. And so I would need to correct that email address. But like I said, this is not going to update the system. You'd still have to go back into our system and update that. But you can see how that works. Same thing with these other people. All the O'Keefes have an apostrophe, which is not a valid email address. All right, I'm going to go ahead and let me just get rid of the email address so it doesn't cause an error. All right, let me go next. Okay, now I'm seeing some other errors here, which I'm going to look at 10 errors. So it's telling me that the Social Security wages do not match up to Medicare, which is a problem. In fact, these people don't have wages at all. So I'd want to remove them. And I may have the issue with other people. Yeah, see, these people have nothing or it doesn't match up to what's in Medicare. So you'll see here 500 for social, 1,092 for Medicare. That's a problem. Unless this person has some exemption, that's a problem there. I'd want to fix that. So it's pointing these things out. It will not let me move forward. I'm going to just skip past that for right now, but I'd want to fix these people to do that. And you'll see the other columns here showing the stuff that's in the other boxes. So let me go back to like box 12. There's my different codes for box 12. Right above it, you'll see the totals for everything. So it makes it very easy to compare it to different reports because I can see the totals up top for my wages. I can run those reports for my taxes, for my deductions, and make sure it matches up with the appropriate boxes up here. And then I can go ahead and run this data. So I would hit next here after I cleared all these errors. It would check all of these things to make it right, make sure it's right. And the final step, what it will do is it will ask me to actually print out my W-2s. I'm not going to do that because first off, I don't want to clear all those errors, but it will take me a chance to print them myself or to have Aatrix do it for me. There's a cost to Aatrix. It costs, I believe, and don't quote me on this, $1.99 per employee for them to print and mail them for you, as well as provide an electronic copy to the employees. So you can, take that for what it is and pay the price if you want to have them do it, or you could do it yourself. All right. I don't know if there's been any Q&A. I haven't been monitoring that, but I know our team has. I did want to switch back over to our slideshow here. Thank you for sticking around the extra time here. And let me go back to my slide presentation. I know that was kind of an abrupt ending, but that's really it. I can't go forward with my Aatrix, so I'm not going to continue on. So let's look at this right here. Now we're going to take a little bit of a break because of the holidays and year end and so forth. We realize that not only us, but everybody else is probably extremely busy with, their taxes and year end processing and everything like that. So we're going to take about a month break in between, of course, because of the holidays, but also because it's not a great time to work. But you'll see here ACA reporting. which is another US requirement. It's going to be in January 10th. We're going to cover that. And then we're going to get back to our regularly scheduled learning series. We're going to talk about onboarding. We're going to cover ACA reporting a second time in February. So in case you missed the one in January, you might be swamped and you want to, join the one in February, you're welcome to join either one or both. And as always, please feel free to reach out to support, give us a call, send us an email, hit the question mark in the system and send a support ticket through that way. We are here to help you. We don't want you to have to, stress out about everything and lose sleep over stuff. We want to help you out and make sure everything is right and that get all your W-2s and all the other forms submitted on time and accurately. So please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you for staying around an extra 10 minutes or so. I appreciate it. And I will see everybody after the new year.